Hello and welcome to the Intersection with me and Rachel Harris. I'm Graham Hughes, and we're on Politics Social. And we were just talking about the fact that when we were a couple of minutes late, it's not because we're late. We're actually here. We're just having a nice chat.
Yeah,
we're just having a nice chat. That's all. That's fine.
a
Anyway,
wizard of rock.
big shout out to our wonderful socialites in the chat. We've got Anthony Fisher there. We've got a Dark 4x4. We've got Roxy Rules. We've got Simon Smith as well, and Alvone. And One Angry Pagan has entered the chat. Hello,
Hey.
One Angry Pagan, saying evening badgers. Badger. Did you see that Uncle Phil on his wedding cake? He had badgers on his wedding cake.
I did.
That is a commitment to the bit. I love that. That is a commitment to the cause.
Solid commitment.
Of badgers everywhere. Mr. and Mrs. Badger. Just like in Wind in the Willows, with Toad of Toad Hall being played, of course, by Nigel Farage. Anyway, so we have got a packed agenda
Again.
a trans agenda this afternoon, this early evening. So should we get cracking on it? So the first thing we want to talk about is the weaponization of trans issues in politics, and you've described it as a gateway hate drug, which I think is a wonderful way of putting it.
It is.
It's awful that it is that, but it sums it up nicely, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I just want to apologize to the socialites, because normally we want to talk about other inclusion topics, right? But the battleground is trans, and there's a lot of politics going on. Yeah. And trans people seem to be at the front line at the moment. So it's trans again, but we'll try to sprinkle in some other bits. So the weaponization of trans in politics. So it always is on the right, middle right, hard right, alt right, anybody on the right who are wrong.
Hey,
they
are, you know. Do you know how you can tell if someone on the right is lying?
Their mouth is moving.
Yes. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
So the gateway hate drug, because because trans rights haven't been won, worldwide. We haven't fully established them. We were the last sort of human rights battleground. So it's easy to pick off. And as I've said every week on this channel, starts with the kids, as it has done here in America. Take their healthcare away, demonize, the whole, them at school, give them a right, all that kind of stuff. Then it's adults. In the UK, we're moving on to adults now. Then it's same-sex marriage, which you're seeing move on in the US, and then women. And America's kind of doing it, all the plates spinning at the same time. So they're attacking on all fronts. Here, we seem to be going more sequentially. So although there are elements in the United Kingdom talking about women's rights to bodily autonomy and same-sex marriages on their route map, they seem to be just talking about trans kids, trans adults here. Now in America, I think it was, I watched the debate last night.
Did you get up? Did you watch it live?
I watched a bit of it live, but I saw your bit, a little bit of you. It was only because I passing through. I didn't want to watch it because I did watch the last one with you, and it was traumatic. Yeah. So I decided I wasn't going to watch it. Yeah.
I thought you did better out of that last one than I did. I was absolutely. I mean, I was traumatized after it. Like, oh my God, Trump is going to win the election. But now I'm kind of like,
no, because I watch a lot of I watch a lot of the Republicans that are going to vote for the Democrat, and they've always said that Biden was going to get spun out. And then after that, the only reason I was happy was because I knew that they were going to spin him out. It was going to be a lot longer, but all the Republicans that are going to vote Democrat were saying they're going to spin him out at some point. They just need an excuse. And they obviously knew that he was not performing very well in private, because they were getting a lot of, but we didn't know that until we saw him on that stage. So I always kind of thought it was going to happen, but it was still an awful thing to watch.
Alvone is saying in the chat, the last one depressed me so much.
I thought we were done for.
It was like the fucking week after the election. It was like the elation of the election of like, finally the Tories are gone.
Yeah.
And it was literally a week later. It was the Thursday after the election, which was on the Thursday. And it was just like, it was like a smack in the face. It was just like, no, sorry, liberals. That's all you get. Yeah. You just get this little thing, and then you get back in your box. Get back in your box. Yeah. But one other thing I was going to pick up on what you said there about trans hate being a sort of gateway drug, transphobia being, and one of the things I think about is the fact that a lot of people don't have trans friends in the way that people have gay friends, or people know someone of a different race or a different religion. And it's interesting that every time you get a survey done on racism in the UK, the most racist, xenophobic fucking places are always places where it's like entirely white people. It's like some little village in Dorset. No offense to Dorset. But like, you know, it's a place where it's like 99.9% white. Yeah. And they are the ones who are most concerned about immigration. They have valid concerns. Yeah. We have strange concerns, whatever they call themselves.
But that's what's happening in East Germany, right? Immigration in East Germany hasn't affected anybody in East Germany. And yet...
No, because no one wants to live there.
Well, that's why the ADF couldn't get any foothold in West Germany. So they've moved all their politicians over East Germany where it doesn't affect them. And it's worked.
And you've got some people who grew up with totalitarianism being under the cosh of the Soviets and, you know, and the Stasi and the East German government at the time. And you know, they look back on those days with fondness, Rachel.
Oh,
I've spoken to some of them. They're like, well, you know, at least you knew.
You knew where you were.
You knew where you were. Yes. You knew what a woman was. A horse was a horse, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, I know. People, they get used to what they get used to.
So ratting on your neighbours.
Watching the debate last night was hilarious. I watched it all day. I've watched every analysis of it on the Bullwhip, the Lincoln Project.
It was a car
David
crash.
Patman.
Such a car crash. You could see the satisfaction and the delight in Harris's eyes when he fell into her traps. And she was just like, yeah, gotcha. And there must have been about 11 or 12 gotcha moments in that debate.
Her face was sort of...
Yeah.
So
nice.
To say the stuff about eating cats and dogs was hilarious, but the stuff about your kids are going to school and coming home having sex changes, as he calls them, they're not sex changes. Anyway, you know,
so gender affirming surgery in schools.
Yeah,
like, you know, schools that can't afford textbooks or pencils, or to feed the children properly, but you know, they can afford like the surgery that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars and is illegal.
But he went one step further, because last night, which was new on me, he was saying they were doing it. They were locking up the aliens that were coming into America and letting them have gender reassignment surgery as well. I was well, I'm breaking into the US and getting free gender reassignment surgery under Trump. So ridiculous. Even Republicans thought that was ridiculous. When you watched all the commentators today, they're going, "What the hell? I don't think anybody's going to buy that we're changing kids' genders in schools
and eating cats and dogs in Ohio."
Yeah. And so it is a sort of gateway drug for the hard right. I mean, I've always said to you, it's really weird. If you're going to be a hard right government and you want to have hard right policies on low taxation and take people's rights away, attacking LGBT people, which is a big part of the community, you lose quite a big, because I'm sure there are LGBT people that have those kind of views as well, but you attack them as well, and you attack women and you attack black people. You always kind of lose the reason you don't succeed is because you lose the people you're going to need to help you get that momentum, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really funny, and so in comes, you know, it's like here in the UK, Kemi Badenoch's first political run, she put 2, you know, male and female signs up on the loo doors to make a point in her first run. Now that flopped, of course. And then this time she attacks a Time Lord again, and it's like, why are you? It polls after polls in the US and polls after polls here, nobody gives a fuck about trans people. Not in a bad way. It's not an issue they care about. It's not in the top 20 issues that anybody cares. It might be in the 3% of the gender crit movement, but it really isn't. People don't vote on trans issues.
Yeah. It's the same with the EU. It was something that people complained about, maybe, you know, the racist old uncle at the family dinner.
Yeah.
But like most people, it didn't affect their everyday life. So what? I mean, when you've got real issues, like you can't afford to pay the fucking rent, you can't afford to put the heating on. To think you've got the time and the energy and the headspace to go, have you heard about those trans people existing?
Yeah. And it makes you look weak because trans people don't have much. You know, there are a lot of us, and I think that the fact is the point you made earlier. There are more. 28% of Gen Z are LGBTQI.
Yes.
So you have a pair. So as I always say, it's not Gen Z. 1% of Generation Z are trans or non-binary, right? So, but they have a mum and dad. They have a brother and sister. They have allies. All the things I always say.
Well, I was going to say that with the younger generation, you're right. They know someone who's trans.
Yeah.
So my stepdaughter knows someone who's trans at school. Yeah. And it's just fine. It's normal. She's got a mate who's Muslim at school who wears a headscarf. It's fine. Yeah. It's not, it's not like an issue to them because they don't know it should be an issue. because you've got to teach kids hate.
But it's ridiculous. This is why they try to suppress trans issues being discussed in schools, and they try to take away trans medical care. They're trying to suppress that at younger age, so they don't know about this. But they're still trans, and they'll still come out as trans in the same numbers. You're not gonna, and they have the internet to look at, which is another, and it's that whole the percentage of, it's not 1% of the population that's going to support trans rights. Hard support is going to be 5 or 6% because of friends, allies, and then you've got all the other people that know those people that kind of soften because they've heard about trans people or met them. So it makes you look weak as a politician to attack people that don't have the rights. But it's also a stupid thing to do because there are more trans and non-binary people and allies and LGBT people that ally to trans people than there are anti-trans campaigners in the UK. There just are. And more people are coming out as trans, not because there's something in the water, not because it's a trend. They were always there. When I was in the clubs in the 1990s and the 1980s, packed to the rims with trans and non-binary people. We just weren't as visible. We don't, but we are now.
I love the idea that it's a trend. It's a fad. It's just a fad that people are like. You're like, this is a decision.
Yeah.
You might decide in your younger years that you like men, and then a bit later on, you might decide that you like women. You can't help that. That is just something that your body, your brain naturally does to you. It says, this is what turns me on. I can't help it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about actually, going through with gender realignment surgery, that's for life. That's a commitment for life. Which is a lot of these politicians who are 3 times divorced have got no idea of making a commitment for life because they've never done it. So the idea it's a fad.
Yeah. And it just makes you look weak as a politician, and long term, history's not going to judge you well because the kids are going to remember, right? So, and they're voting. So I'm noticing. We'll come up with some other topics, and I'm noticing a little bit of a tip in trans and non-binary in the UK, and I think that it's still great, but there are some green shoots popping up, and we'll come on to some of those in a minute.
I think people are more likely to actually speak out now on trans rights when they're not trans, and I think it was a thing that held me back. So I've got some fault here because it wasn't until my trans friend said to me, "No, we want you to speak up," because I felt like it wasn't my place to say. It's like me pontificating on feminism, for instance. Should I, as a man, as a cisgender, middle-aged, middle-class white guy, should I be talking about black issues? Well, no, not necessarily. I shouldn't.
As an ally, you can.
But as an ally, I should be speaking out and saying these are the people to follow. And if I'm able to give a platform to people to talk about what historical grievances and issues that are going on to this very day that are intersectional and hold people back from living the life that they want to lead. For no reason whatsoever, except bigotry and bullying. That's it. It's the school bully never leaves.
No, and I mean, that's what I always say to allies. I mean, I speak
school.
I speak to several thousand people every week on trans issues, and trans inclusion and allyship. I did a crowd of 300 this morning, and it's the thing I always say as an ally. It's the silence that kills us as trans people. I don't care if you make a mistake as long as it's followed by a big apology. I'd rather you spoke up, wrote to your MP, saw your MP, bought appropriate media that was trans inclusive, that kind of stuff, make complaints to Ofcom about transphobic content, all that kind of stuff is an active allyship. It's the silence when people just go, oh, isn't it bad? And they don't say anything. That's the bit it's unnerving. So, and the other thing is that I speak, as I say, to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people over the job that I do. And the audiences are always super involved and super happy and super, the questions are great. They are always really engaged. I never really come across people going, trans people, toilets. It doesn't really come up. It's just this, it always is the smallest groups with lots of nasty backing, with a lot of money, a lot of money. Yeah.
Connections, money, platforms. These people dominate the platforms that exist because they've got the money to do so.
Yeah.
Like if you pay for advertising on Facebook, you get your message under a lot more noses than if you don't.
Yeah.
And these are set up this way. I mean, at Twitter, I'm sure that these nefarious bastards pay to get
Yeah.
their messages out on Twitter as well.
Well, that just brings me
No,
on.
no doubt about it.
Well, that brings me on to my next, social media
Social
trans
media
hate.
trans
Obviously,
hate,
I mean,
yes.
social media, we know that
Twatter.
Twatter's gone super. I mean, you can't use the word cisgender on,
Yeah, it comes up as a hate word or
yeah, as a
something
hate
if you
word,
use it.
which is
Yeah,
ridiculous. So we use not
cisgender,
just use
which just means the
non-trans,
same.
just say non-trans, and
Yeah,
then you can still say it.
but this is we used to have this, don't you remember? Like it back in, was it the 80s? Was it when people were saying, "I don't want to be called heterosexual.
Yeah.
I'm just normal."
Yeah.
Why do they have to give me a label
It
to
is
say
like
what
it
I
is like
am?
an Oasis revival, trans hate. I mean, it's like here it comes again. It's that we don't charge as much, it is
The special
but
dynamic pricing. Oh my God,
but
really proud of
I
that. I love that.
but I left Twitter because of the pylons, and it
Mm,
became a full fash tech. I left Facebook because somebody called me a pedo and I was wishing somebody happy pride, and that was not great. But
Jesus.
each of these doesn't fall below our community standards is the worst thing you can always hear when you make a complaint. Now I'm on LinkedIn as well. It's the only thing I'm on, but I used to be on Instagram and all the other stuff. But
Yeah.
every time I complained about abuse, it was like, does not fall below our community standards. I know you'll find this disappointing at this time. You may, but maybe you could block them. And you think, well, if they chainsaw my head off
Yeah.
and burn my house down, does that fall below your community standards? What
It's
does?
mad,
Because
isn't it?
nothing I've ever
Yeah.
reported on any of the platforms has ever been
Mm,
taken down. And that's
yeah.
over 5 years. You said, what? So basically, you're saying trans hate is fine. Transphobia is fine. You'll see some of these companies queuing up for an award and an LGBT, during the summer season of LGBT awards, but for all the great work they do in the community. But they don't police and protect trans and non-binary people online, and that's
Yeah.
really annoys me.
Yeah.
That's my peeve for today. That they
No, I
don't.
think you're absolutely right. You put LinkedIn in the list that you gave me.
Oh.
I don't really use LinkedIn that
Yeah.
much, but is that police? Is that
Well,
like, do
here's a
they?
trend that I'm seeing on LinkedIn, right? I'm seeing a lot of Gen Zers and young millennials moving on to LinkedIn and it's a business platform for connections. Hi, how are you? But they're using it like Facebook,
Mm,
photographs, holidays, conversations, activism. Because why? Because LinkedIn is one of the better ones for protection. You can block, and when you
okay.
block somebody in LinkedIn, they're blocked. Unlike some other platforms where you block them and they're not really blocked. And
Yeah.
so LinkedIn is a more of a safer platform. I'm on it because I feel a bit safer there than anywhere else I have in the past. So you're seeing a lot of people moving across and using LinkedIn and like Facebook, which you're not meant to do, right? And some people go, "Oh, this is a professional network. You're not meant to do it over here," but people do.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing
Yeah.
a lot more activists and campaigners and people using it as a social media platform, which wasn't its intention, but it's a good place to be.
Yeah.
And so I don't get as much abuse on LinkedIn, but if I do, a block removes them completely, and
Yeah.
I like that.
That's good. That's really
So,
good.
so yeah,
And
that's my
and, and
pet.
this is something I'll pick up on that. Like again, as a white cisgender, I guess heteronormative to an extent kind of guy, like I do not get an inch of the shit that you get, that Supertansky gets,
Yeah,
that
it's
Femi
horrible.
gets, that a lot of my really good friends are attacked on a daily
Yeah,
basis, not for what they say, but for who they are.
yeah,
And that is an absolute disgrace. And the fact that they are allowed to get away with
yeah,
it by these toxic billionaires who own these platforms because they know
yeah.
rage equals engagement. And
I
I sometimes fall for it where someone's written a nasty comment under a YouTube video, and I start writing a reply, usually about their mum, and I stop,
yeah,
delete the message, and I just block them off. I just
yeah,
block them.
yeah,
I can't. I'm not going to engage. It might be a bot. Who
yeah.
freaking knows? Why am I wasting my time?
I can tell you that I get when I open Google and I have to put something in, I'm really conscious not to accidentally put something connected with me on it. I get really
Mm,
anxious because I know there's a lot of stuff. There's right-wing sites that are not newspapers. I'm not going to name them, but there's loads of
yeah,
right-wing for
yeah,
people who don't have a voice sites. And there's a load of attack stuff on me on there and on
like
Mumsnet.
Murdoch.
Yeah, and Mumsnet, there's
Bother
Mumsnet,
me.
all that stuff. There's nasty threads about me on there. There's all the stuff in the nationals. And so I don't want to see that stuff. And I was thinking an ally go, God, have you seen the thing about you on Mumsnet? And they'll send you some link. No, don't. Now
No,
I know
don't
this.
do that. Please don't do
Yeah,
that.
it
I
really
hate
hurts.
that. You know, and I can't imagine what it's like for you.
It is.
It's like someone's calling you names on the internet. Like, there's no reason why you should have to know that. Or you should have to deal with it, you know, because then the onus is on you. Oh, fuck, I've got to go to this thing. I've got to defend myself now. I've got to read all these horrible comments. No, I'd rather just shut it out. I think that if you want to be a good ally, please, I mean, to anyone, to any of your friends, going, oh, if you heard what people are saying about you, it's not. And I know people do it. I know people don't, they're not necessarily doing it to be a bastard.
No.
Do you know what I mean? They're not doing it to be mean. Just don't think about how
I just don't want to know it's there, and I know it's there, but I don't want to know it's there. I think
I completely get that.
There's a thread on Mumsnet about me, which is nasty. There's articles on some of those right wing. There are these websites which are just where you. I'm not going to name them, but they're not newspapers, but they're media sites set up hard right, and there are articles on there. And it makes me very anxious. So I don't like going into Google and Googling stuff just in case I accidentally it will pull up a memory of something I've Googled in the past with my name. And that makes you quite depressed when you do see the vitriolic hate that is out there. So I try to, for mental health, not know it's there.
Also know this as well, Rachel. A lot of that is manufactured. It's not even real. Because most people, like you say, it's not that they don't care. It's just that it's not a big issue in their daily life. You know, there is just a hardcore group of weirdos who make everything about trans people. Like, they wake up in the middle of the night and a cold sweat because trans people.
Yeah, there are websites out there where written by sort of gender critical, where any trans person does a talk, they'll go and then they'll write up the talk on the site with a horrible gender critical angle on it. There are loads of those sites out there. And they're cruel and they come up in your search engine sometimes. So let's move on to something funny. Tickle.
Before we do that, we've had an absolute mega chat off Weaponization. Thank you very much. £50.
Wow,
Rachel.
thank you.
£50. Thank you so much, Weaponization.
Thank you.
I have a trans friend who said a manager at the local supermarket was transphobic. So we pulled a stunt where I piled a trolley full of goods. She separately triggered him to an outburst and I made a point of handing him the troll of lost sales. There you go. Thank you so much for that, Weaponization, and thanks for putting that transphobic manager in their place.
Yeah,
and I think that's a great thing that you've done because you've shown that it is not acceptable, and you've shown that your trans friend has allies who are prepared to go the extra mile to make sure that this tidal wave of transphobia that we've been experiencing the last 8 years, would you say? How many years it's been going on for now?
Well, I mean, there's always been transphobia, but it's stepped up after Theresa May announced the self-ID and the LGBT plan in 2016. It started
2016. God, what a year. Anyway, come on, tell us about a bit of giggle and tickle.
Just when you were saying that revenge thing, I was thinking, oh, Kirk, have you not heard the old Klingon proverb that says space, revenge is a dish served well cold, in space it is cold. I love that. I love my favorite speech. So tickle and giggle. There is law students are going to love this case. For I was a law student. I mean, you're always looking for Donahue and Stevenson, all these cases, but tickle and giggle is going to go down in the law books as a
Everyone's
great
going to
case.
remember this. Yeah. So this is Roxanne Tickle who took the app Giggle to court.
Yeah, giggle and tickle. You can't. And so Roxanne Tickle joined the app. I think it's a sort of dating app, and she was on it for a while, and then it has facial recognition software, and for some reason she was kicked off. So she had sort of indirect discrimination. So she sued the platform, and also the CEO had said some pretty hostile stuff about her as well. And I mean, obviously, we had gender crits giving evidence from the UK, and the Australian judge threw it out. And you don't have grounding, you have no understanding. So
this is in Australia. This is
but I think it's we had one of our famous gender crits sent evidence in, and the judge just went, "You don't have any standing in this case. You're not an expert on trans."
Yeah. I'm on Twitter being mean at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Keyboard warrior. That's my qualification.
I'm not going to name the I'm not going to name the gender crit, but I just don't. But it was one of our famous ones, and anyway, it was chucked out. And the judge basically it basically said that sex is changeable and not necessarily binary, which is a very progressive
Yeah.
view. But
Yeah.
more importantly, and obviously Roxanne Tickle won, so Tickle, which is great. Tickles always beat Giggles because they're first. What I really liked is that part of the Australia's part of what they call the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which is a 1979 treaty, which is really persuasive to 189 other countries for precedent, right? So they'll look to Australia and go, well, how did you find on this case about a trans person? Which, legally, this judge is saying, well, a trans person is a woman in this interpretation. Well, a lot of other countries use that treaty, so it's persuasive. So actually, it just injected a lot of pro-trans legal precedent into a lot of other countries. So that was really positive.
That's fantastic.
That was. So that was a really
direction.
tickle and giggle.
Thank you, that judge,
Yeah.
and thank you very much to Roxanne Tickle for taking
Yeah, Roxanne Tickle. Thanks for the great name.
So from one from one good news story to not so good news story, we're going to be talking about next.
So there's a good
let's
and a
talk
bad.
about Wes.
Yeah, there's a good and a bad news story with Labour this week. So the good news, the bad news story is Wes has written a letter to peers and MPs highlighting his approach to the care of trans children. Where he waives the cash review, which is becoming a human shield against all ills of the world for people that aren't particularly happy clappy trans. But I think in that case, that he said that there'd been an audit on just a sort of suicide warning about children dying by suicide. But, a lot of trans campaigners have said actually they didn't take into consideration those waiting in the waiting list, which has where young people may have died by suicide. So the case, it's a done deal kind of letter. This is we're going to do CAS right in the clinics. Now we're going to do the adult review. Remember, trans kids, trans adults, same-sex marriage. So they're going to review the adult trans care, which we're all dreading. I just think that his view is we know the British Medical Association are going to do another revision of CAS, take a review of it. We know that various other international commentators have come out against the CAS review. It needs to be redone, but it's getting waved around. It's being used for things like the school's guidance, right? So it's like, the CAS review in the school's guidance about, and this was a medical review. It wasn't to do with school's guidance, but now it's getting waved around. Oh, we got global warming CAS review. It's getting waved around for everything. And yet it's, the BMA want to do their own review. Yeah, I think it was, was it Yale medical or no, Harvard Law had said last week that it wasn't, there were problems with it. So we're seeing
it's sort of going to become, I think, in the future a bit like that bloody article
Box
by that
book.
Wakefield creep that was in
the
Lancet. I can't actually believe that the Lancet is still a magazine that people can buy. I think it should have shut down forever after putting out that horrific bit of disinformation by a man being paid by rival drugs companies to say that the MMR vaccine caused autism. Like, why is the Lancet? Why are the editors of the Lancet not in jail?
I think
for allowing that, the damage that they have done, the children that they have killed with their anti-vax bullshit, and I think you're going to see the same thing with this CAS. Review.
I think it'll be like Dr. Spock's book on childcare. Do you remember that all got?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not the Vulcans.
Not.
That's Mr. Spock. This is Dr. Spock.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a problematic text from the start, wasn't it?
I think that when we look back, that CAS will be because lots of organizations and international, the World Pathway for Association of Transgender Health, European version of that, Harvard Law, British Medical Association. We're seeing lots of people coming out. It's getting peer reviewed because it's out there now. So I don't know. I just think it will be looked at with a different lens in the future. Also there's a new study in the New South Wales by the New South Wales government in Australia.
Australia again.
Very progressive country by the looks of it at the moment. The benefits of puberty blockers outweigh the negative potential drawbacks in their report. Who knew? Good. We all did.
Well, yeah. I mean, exactly. And in the next update, water is wet. And then should we talk about a good news story then?
Good
Again,
news
we'll try and
story.
alternate this. This is about Sade,
Diamond
the singer,
Life.
and Sam Smith, who I think is brilliant because he winds the gammon up something rotten, and I love seeing these sort of these very red-faced older people getting very upset and angry about Sam Smith.
Oh, do you think, just as an aside, when you call somebody a gammon, people go on, that's racist, that is. Have you seen people do that online when you call somebody a gammon?
Well,
How
I mean,
awful, that's
if
racist.
someone did that on this channel, I'd just block them because I'm like, you're not a serious person.
Are you kidding me? That's sort of, gammons aren't a race. It's like it's sort of it's a
lifestyle.
Being. It's a lifestyle. Yeah, that's right.
You've drank too much. Nothing's gone right in your life. You don't love your family, and so you just take your hatred out on strangers on the internet.
I always think that, you know, if the right wing can't get rid of the Equality Act, they'll put Section 10, gammon protection. That's the thing. I think
Gammon Protection League, the GPL.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a trans benefit album. This is to raise money for trans organisations. You said it was 46 tracks.
46
on this
tracks
album?
is what I read in the article.
Bloody hell!
It's a sort of War of the Worlds double album.
That's Tay-Tay levels of dedication to the craft.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is wonderful.
So it's called the Transa, Transa benefit album.
So they have a daughter who is trans.
Non-binary child, I think.
Non-binary.
I think. But that's amazing. And I always liked Sade in the 80s when I was time traveling back there and I was living in the 80s. 80s was a great time. But
San Junipero. Here we go.
It was all the one-hit wonders I really liked. Timbuk3, Owen Paul, Cutting Crew. So the 80s was a good time.
Brilliant Mind by Furniture. That's my one-hit wonder from the 80s.
Yeah, I like that.
What a great song.
What are you going to do with your brilliant mind? That one. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I must be out of my brilliant mind.
I'm not really good at lyrics, as my wife will tell you. I play lots of musical instruments, but I can't remember the lyrics to anything. So
please all buy this album when it comes out, or stream it on Spotify or Amazon Music, whatever you listen to. Okay, should we crack on? Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. So it was just a sort of weird little story. Weird story that David Tennant prevented Joanne Rowling from appearing in an episode of Doctor Who.
You mean Robert Galbraith?
Yes. It was that Christmas special one with Kylie Minogue, where the Titanic's going to crash into the earth, right?
Yeah.
That story. That was going to be, and he said he didn't really want the author to appear. He thought it was a bit too much like satire. Doctor Who. That was quite funny. But anyway, oh
my God, is this an origin story?
It could. I don't know.
Do you think that J.K. Rowling got so miffed that she wasn't allowed to be in Doctor Who? She thought, oh, this is it. I'm going to hate David Tennant forever. And when David Tennant's daughter came out as trans, then she went, that's it. That's it now. I've got it.
Could be. But it was 12 years before she started her anti-trans take. But she has called Good Omens that he's in, the gender Taliban.
Oh, wow. She's going to really hate Chaos. If you watch Chaos with Jeff Goldblum in it, it's fan-ficking-tastic.
I can't watch Netflix because of all the sort of Dave Chappelle, Ricky Gervais.
There are other ways of getting Netflix shows.
Okay.
Rachel, that I might be able to help you out with. Just saying. Lots of trans characters, lots of non-binary characters because it's Greek gods and goddesses.
But it's got Jeff Goldblum in it, right? And I love Jeff.
Yes.
I mean, I don't date guys, but I don't date guys. I'm married to a woman. I love women, but Jeff Goldblum, might be on my laminated card.
Your hall pass.
Yeah.
I have a Jeff Goldblum horse pass. A hall pass. No, but it honestly, it's really good. Susie Eddy Izzard is in it. There's a bunch of characters, and one of the big plot lines, without wanting to be too spoilery, is that there was a girl who decided that she wasn't a girl, she was a boy, and this has caused a huge ruction in the community of people that he grew up in. If you know your Greek mythology, you might be able to guess which female-based society might have been a bit upset if one of their numbers decided that they weren't actually female. So yeah, it's very good. I'm not got to the end yet, and obviously I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but I've really enjoyed it so far.
Good.
I think it's been absolutely
excellent. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, very funny, very dark. There's some very dark bits in it. Quite violent sometimes.
But Jeff Goldblum, that's it. I don't care what it is. I always like.
It's good.
Always like Jeff.
Good. Yeah, I like it.
Okay,
so next up, we're
politics again.
Green Party.
So this is kind
bringing
of
down the house. Oh no, cleaning the house.
They are cleaning.
House cleaning.
See, I mean, they have. There's a whole group outside the Green Party where gender critics go. They've got a whole group, haven't they? But
yeah.
So their spokesperson for health was suspended for no fault suspension, but basically saying some pretty, what I would call anti-trans comments and waving cats around and all the usual stuff, all the signs. The Kate Hatton basically said, I liked it. She said their comments were just the most recent thing in a long list that has made people uncomfortable. So I don't know what, I didn't want to go and look at the history, but it was interesting that the Greens have, and there were protests outside the Green conference by gender critics, but the Greens have been consistently, I mean, I was Labour, I stopped the Tories.vote, got a lot of people to vote Labour, and I feel quite disappointed with Labour at the moment. And so, I was like, next time, if we have to do another Stop the Tories, Stop the Vote, and the strategic vote is Labour again, would I vote? I don't know if I would, and that to be a terrible thing, because I get the point.
To be like fair to us in the Stop the Tories Vote group, I mean, realistically, we actually got a load of Lib Dems in. We arguably got those Greens in.
Yeah.
We weren't Labour, and there were a lot of people in the Stop the Tories Vote group
that's true.
who were very anti-Labour. They weren't Labour. They were more anti-Tory than anything else, but we were giving advice to people voting for all different parties, Plaid Cymru, the SNP in Scotland, to say this is the person who is most likely, this is the candidate who's most likely to beat the Tories in your constituency.
Yeah.
And in constituencies where, there was someone who was definitely going to win, one of the Labour strongholds, say in Liverpool, he said, vote with your heart, vote for whoever you want. And let them know that they've got some support.
Well, here, I live in a Tory constituency, sadly, and my vote would, it was a big win, and it wouldn't. I wish I hadn't voted for the Labour person now, but I did vote.
Did they win? Did they get in?
The Conservatives won here where I am.
Oh.
Yeah, it's always been a Tory stronghold here. It's a sort of rosette on a pig thing.
So have you checked your pipes.
Check my pipes.
Yeah, in your local area, see if there's any lead.
Well, it might be lead.
I blame the lead.
It's an agricultural area. It's just,
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Be lead pipes everywhere, and that's it. You have some lead pipes in your bloodstream, and then that's it. You go mad.
I know, it's certainly
hate the EU and trans people for some reason.
Well, a lot of the people, and the thing is, you talk to a lot of people around my area, and it's like, we can't get subsidies for our farms, and we can't get people to pick our stuff, and blah blah blah. And you think, you're voting Conservative, and Brexit.
Voted for this,
and
literally voted for this thing to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But I didn't think that it would affect me.
Yeah, but it was good. It was good. A lot of Labour people I know some Conservative, but they all had the support your farming support in Parliament today, which I thought was quite good. And I think Labour does support farmers. But back to the Greens. I mean, I think it's, for me, it's a sort of, I know a lot of Greens in my area. They're very trans inclusive. Good. Trans isn't really an issue for them. If somebody who says something horrible about trans people, it's like being saying being racist. They just kick them out. That's just done. And they've been holding the line. Liberals aren't too bad. They did sort of take a step back against trans support last year on one of their policies, but they are in the main supportive. So Liberals and Greens still feel a safe haven. If I think that if the Greens change that, they know they're very conscious of the LGBT vote of Gen Z and young millennial. So I think they know that if they throw that vote away by backing down on trans, they're going to be in trouble as a party. So I'm really glad they're holding the line.
I love the line you've used about waving Cass around like a shield. Just makes me think of Batfink. Yeah. My Cass report is like a shield of steel.
Yeah, it is. People are using it for all sorts of things. They're using it for all sorts of things, and because we all know it's got a troubled the way it was formed.
No trans people were involved. Is this right? No trans people were involved in the drafting of the report.
There were some small trans groups consulted that has, but and you can see some of the voices if you look really, really carefully in there. But it just, the way that Kemi Badenoch initiated it, the way that Cass was selected, the way that the departments were sort of cleared out to get it through, it just feels, everything that Helen, you've gone and look at the Cass report, Helen Belcher, Intersection, it's very good. There were a lot of concerns raised. And if you go Google on YouTube, there's lots of trans people, much cleverer than I, talking about Cass. There's a few peer review people who've gone in there and who are proper scientists and gone through line by line. What the Trans podcast, which I recommend all the time, they have done some podcasts. You go back a month or two, they went through line by line with some experts on Cass. What the trans, they're really great. And they raise there's a lot of, make sure you're strong, because they do bring up a lot of sad stuff, because they do the research. They're good journalists and they find this stuff out. It's a great podcast. And they are looking for patrons if you want to donate.
Do you know, this is going to sound really discriminatory of me, whatever. Like, do you know what concerned me even before the report came out? Helen Cass. Is it Helen Cass?
No. Oh God, it'll come to me something. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Cass. Yeah. She is a cisgender woman of a certain age. You know what I'm going to say here, don't you? If you get all the different cohorts of groups, people, whatever, and you map transphobia over time, I'm just saying there will be a bump with white, specifically, women in their 50s and 60s.
People of a certain age.
Yes. And I don't know why. It seems, and obviously I've got no scientific backing for this. So please, if you want to, Rachel, tell me I'm completely up the wrong tree.
Certainly, that you look at some of the anti-trans organisations.
Hillary Cass.
That
could be a man's name.
That's true. There was a picture of one of the anti-trans organisations a couple of years ago at their conference, and there was a big crowd picture of, they were all over 50, which was quite interesting. They looked all over 50 anyway. There are younger gender crit. I come across younger ones, but in the main, it does feel like a sort of older cohort. But that's because Gen Z and young millennials in general, and Gen X. I mean, I'm not saying that right through to people that boomers. I do have allies right across the whole broad spectrum.
Yeah. But the young exceptions. Hashtag not all boomers. All boomers.
But I'm Gen X. A lot of them. Missed it so close.
Yeah.
But it just makes me. It can be. It does feel like people of a certain age quite often, but Cass does. As going back to what you said, the Cass thing has been just waved around in a way that by people for all sorts of weird stuff, and so let's go to some good news.
Yes.
So the Equality Act, obviously, a lot of the anti. So if you're on the hard right, it's leave the European Court of Human Rights, because what do we want these rights for? Leave Brexit.
Humans don't need rights.
No,
they just need wrongs.
Leaving the Equality Act would just be, because there's a tax on DEI by in America and a little bit here, and Equality Act is the sort of the thing they would really love to take away. But it's hard, right? Because it's quite entrenched. It was written. It was written in 2010. Lots of people rely on it. It would be a hard thing and trans the rights in the Equality Act for trans people, it's like going through gender reassignment, and doesn't mean surgery, but it needs strengthening up. It does now include non-binary because of Jaguar Land Rover case, but the hard right always attacking it, and what they want to do is what they want, because they want to put the definition of sex as biological in there because it isn't defined. And if they do that, biological sex, then they can then sort of use it to exclude trans people from lots of services and etc. And that would be, it would mean that trans people can't go anywhere and be imprisoned in their homes. It would be a really draconian thing to do. And the fact is that every lawyer will tell you it works, because the Equality Act allows you to exclude trans people from single sex services, because there's a sentence in there, to achieve a legitimate aim, a trans person can be excluded. Everybody knows that, except people who want to exclude trans people from life, and then go, oh, we need to have biological sex put in there. You don't need to do that. Lawyers will tell you, and lots and lots of my friends are lawyers, will tell you, well, to achieve a legitimate aim, it allows somebody to exclude a trans person. The reason they don't like that is because they then have to justify excluding a trans person, which most people don't want to do. And if you're talking about rape clinics and things, well, you don't then when they're not on dorms, they're all separate rooms. And so it's not that's never been a problem for trans people in rape clinics, and hospitals hadn't been a problem until the Conservatives made it a problem, and Wes has backed it up. Was never a problem either, and most wards are mixed anyway. So it was just. So Labour have actually at least come out and said they have no intention of adding biological sex into the Equality Act because it's not required.
No.
Though what was funny when that came out, as I sent you the articles, Pink News went, hey, it's not going to be, although Pink News is a bit at the moment. But anyway, Pink News said, hey, Labour government aren't going to put sex in define sex in the Equality Act. Then there were 10 right-wing rags said, not closing the loophole, not closing I mean, they all copied the same article into about 10 right-wing nasty output. But it's not a loophole. It's a loophole when something wasn't thought about, but the thing was thought about because they'd already put the line in that would exclude trans people if they needed to, and they didn't need to define. And defining biological sex is gonna be a laugh because not even doctors can really lay that. What is it? That it's kind of learn out biologically what makes a woman, but some women don't have the bits that they would lay out the bits because of various medical procedures. So they're not a woman anymore, and you go down a real rabbit hole trying to define biological sex. So I am pleased that Labour at least have done this. I'm still worried about conversion therapy, which we covered on the last intersection. I still think they've got some groups speaking at the Labour conference on one of the fringe groups, which is on there, which is worrying. That then,
do you want me to go? Do you want me to go along and say
you should go along? You should go along. I think it would be good. I think
why do you hate people for existing?
Yeah, why do you want to? Because lots of countries, as we said in the last session, have banned conversion therapy right across the board for LGBT people. But why is it so difficult here? Is it because the dark money flooding in, the anti-trans movement in the UK is so powerful that they cannot let trans people exist, and they have to have this torture take place? But holistically, we won't be to treat gender people with gender dysphoria, blah blah blah. Well, in helping people decide if they're trans or not, or giving them support, is not covered by conversion therapy in all the other countries. You're allowed to give holistically counseling, psychotherapy, all that's allowed to happen. It's when you say, you're not trans, and you strap me down and do flashing lights and do the Michael Caine nail thing, that's the bit we don't really want to be legalized, right? So other countries have managed to do it. Why is it so difficult here? That's the thing, it's like self-ID. 33 countries have it. Why is it the UK couldn't do that? Is it because we have lots of dark money flooding in and a lot of hate groups? So going after women's rights via trans rights. Well, I think it's the latter, not the former. They're going after women's rights, step on trans people to get those rights. And we say that every week in the
No, but it's true. It is true.
Yeah, there's thousands of articles about it, but you just don't see them in the media.
I mean, you talk about it being like a gateway hate drug, but it's a gateway fasc drug. I mean, it is the gateway to fascism, and you see this time and time again, where you get right-wing oligarchs taking over countries, and they're always transphobic.
Well, look at Viktor Orban; he's banned same-sex marriage. I mean, the Nazis burned the books on gender. It was one of the first book burnings outside the clinic in Berlin.
First, they actually came for the trans people.
But you see people now denying that, and LGBT people.
Well, they deny the Holocaust, so they think the world's flat.
It is. And so,
Rachel, we used to. I mean, it's not very politically correct to say this, but we used to lock people up when they were that stupid.
Yeah.
We didn't give them a platform on the internet, or give them a YouTube show, or put them on the TV. We would literally lock them away.
Yeah.
And we'll say it was for their own good, but you know what? In hindsight, and obviously hindsight's always 2020, I think we locked them away for the good of society.
Yeah.
Because it's like a poison. Like I don't know if stupidity is contagious or something. Yeah. But when you see someone who you've known maybe for quite a long time, and they post something on on Facebook about the world being flat,
Yeah.
and you're like, what the fuck is this? And they say, well, I'm just asking questions. And I'm
Yeah.
like, here's a question for you. Why don't you fuck off? And then I block
Yeah.
them.
Well, it is that. Well, Donald, are these cats and dogs being eaten now in the room? Can you see this happening? It's that how people get these sort of platforms. But it is. I mean, it's the denial that LGBT people were brutalized under the Nazis. They are in Eastern European countries. They've been brutalized again. Russia, they've been brutalized again. It's an easy target, and it is trans are a gateway drug to. We talked about open democracy. The UN have said there's lots of money flooding into the UK to take away women's rights. And you're seeing it in America. You're seeing in, they shouldn't have voting rights. They should have lesser rights unless they have children, Handmaid's Tale stuff. And we've got that here. Some of the movement is funded by some very dark money that they want to take women's bodily autonomy away and voting rights. And they should be at home having white babies because they don't want immigrants coming over here and replacing us, which they're not, but they say they are, and that's what they're worried about. It's a lot of this hate is based on racism and the whole. You have to have 2.1. Capitalism needs 2.1 kids, as you know, for every parent, and we're fallen below 1.8 or whatever we are. So they're not. We haven't got enough people, and Japan's suffering from that. America's suffering from that. A lot of Germany's suffering from that. So you do take in an influx of immigrants and refugees because to keep your capitalist society alive. And what they don't want is. They don't want people with different color faces replacing their society in their eyes. So they then oppress women by taking away their voting and turning them into Handmaid's Tale to punch out white babies. That's kind of the strategy. And if I can work it out, and I'm not very bright, I think most
you are very bright. I think other people yourself down.
But I think other people can work that out, and that's what there's a lot of dark money pushing that hard right. But to get to that. You've got to blow rights apart. So you divide and conquer. You break trans away from LGB. There's an organization that helps doing that.
The UK away from Europe.
Yeah, exactly. So you break the rights, you turn people against each other, and then we're all weaker.
Same as
pour water into a rock, freeze it, and it blows apart. That's what they're doing with trans people. I don't think it's going to work, but it's a battle, right? And you have to be awake to it. And so I spent a lot of time talking to gender groups and inclusive feminism networks, saying, this isn't me. We're kind of done in the UK, trans people. We're a bit buggered, really. But they've really had to go. They're coming for you next. But if you stand with us on our battleground, you won't have to fight the battle because the war is with us at the moment. So that's what we spend a lot of time talking about. And most women get it, but a lot don't. And they don't realize that they're actually fighting against their own self-interest.
Well, this is why the intersection was set up. This on this channel was the idea that there is a lot of intersectionality when it comes to this. And
absolutely.
If you find a transphobe, they're generally a bit racist. They're generally a bit misogynistic, even if they're a woman. They're generally a bit xenophobic. They're generally a bit homophobic, even if they're gay. I mean,
we saw it with the boxers, right?
Yes. Well,
you're not woman enough.
That's blown the whole trans panic out of the water.
It went straight to women. Do not stop go, do not pass go, do not get 200 pounds. You're not feminine enough to be a woman. Wow. Judgment.
I demand to see your DNA test. That's what the richest author in the world told an Algerian woman who lives in a country where if she was trans, she would go to jail. Or worse. So, how dare she do that? Accuse someone of committing a crime for what? For what? And then she went away for 2 weeks. This is J.K. Rowling we're talking about, or XY Rowling, as we like to call her. She went away for 2 weeks, and we thought, oh, great, she shut up. And then she comes back, and she says, oh, look at it, she got loads of makeup on. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you?
And then
I'll tell you what's wrong with J.K. Rowling. Everything.
And then attacked the Italian runner.
Yes.
Who didn't win or didn't qualify, and you still attack them. I mean, it's just like
in the Paralympics. And it's just horrible. I mean, I don't know what's happened to her. She's been kicked in the head by a horse or something. I don't know.
Well, it's then I always think it's that famous painting, the very famous painting of Dante's Inferno is what trans hate. You've seen it. It's like a spiral down into hell, right?
Yes.
And that is transphobia. It starts off with, I got their pronouns wrong and they're a bit horrible to me too. I don't like trans women in single sex spaces. Trans guys, non-binary aren't real. I really get and they got to, and then it becomes all consuming. And then they're tweeting 100 times a day about trans people and they're down in the pit. That's Dante's
Yeah.
Inferno. Gender critical.
Yeah.
That's where you end up
Can
because
we also point out that J.K. Rowling identifies as a man in order to sell terrible books?
yeah.
And so the woman who actually, J.K. Rowling sued the woman who disclosed, she overheard at a dinner party or something that that J.K. Rowling was Robert Galbraith.
Oh.
She was using this author's, she was using someone else's name in order to distance herself from the Harry Potter
Yeah.
universe for her detective novels, and she sued that woman. Because she said, no. When I'm writing detective novels, I am identifying as Robert Galbraith anonymously, and it's no one else's business. And so that woman got sued.
Mm.
And it's like, well, hang on. So it's all right for you. It's all right for you to identify as, a man.
Yeah.
And sue anyone who says otherwise.
Mm. Yeah.
One rule for the rich, one rule for the rest of us. Anyway, should we have some pudding?
Pudding. Hey, and if you don't
can't have your pudding if you haven't had your meat. How can you have your pudding if you have... Anyway, good news. GB News.
When are they going to drop the bomb?
When are you going to drop the
bomb? So the good news, the Trawl, if you don't subscribe to that podcast, you really should.
Our friends Marina and Gemma, who are awesome, by the way.
They are the best. So just to GB News, which is not exactly happy, clappy, trans, inclusive, or LGBT, is laying off 40 more roles with a loss of 42.4 million. One of the employees leaked and
42.4 million roles.
No,
is that many people work for GB News? Jesus Christ.
God, you imagine? No, so they're laying off 40 roles. They've made a loss of 42.4 million. One of the employees leaked and said it was the last days of Saigon. I can talk about that if you want to talk about Saigon. Anyway, it's another.
You were there. You were there on the last helicopter, which was also a time machine.
Which wasn't on the top of the embassy, which is in the picture. It was on top of the CIA building. But anyway, you had to be there to know. Anyway, so that's GB News. The other one is the LGBT Alliance, not exactly another happy clappy organization. They made, thanks to what the trans who highlighted this in their podcast, but made me laugh. They made £100,000 loss. They're in £100,000 deficit, and that's reported on. If you go and look on the civil society website, it gives you all the why they've lost the money and where they've gone from their donations falling.
Where's the LGBT Alliance based, Rachel?
I think it might be. Is it Tufton Street?
Is it Tufton Street?
Yeah.
Is it 55 Tufton Street?
It might be. Yeah.
Interesting.
All the fun places are in Tufton Street, aren't they?
Yes. The Taxpayers Alliance, the IEA, is it?
Policy Exchange Unit.
Policy Exchange, Civitas, all these wonderful right-wing think tanks, mysteriously funded. We don't get to find out who's funding them, but they get their gobs on sticks on the TV every other minute.
But they write a lot of nasty papers about trans, and that's a gateway drug.
It is.
So
I photoshopped up a picture of me, because I had a picture of me holding the Olympic torch back in 2012. But I photoshopped it so that it looked like I was running away from 55 Tufton Street with the building on fire, and I thought this is hilarious, and I put it onto our WhatsApp group, and I was like, I'm going to put this online, put it onto Facebook or something. And
I wonder what they'll do now, because I mean, they were.
I thought, shit, I better not, because people will say, oh, look at it, he wants to burn down this building.
I didn't burn them.
I didn't burn them, but it is a brilliant picture. My photoshopping skills are pretty. They're pretty. Come on. Can I get a bit of kudos?
I mean,
can I get a bit of Photoshop love? I've been using it for 25 years. I should be able to get my head around it by now. I'm going to share it. Maybe I'll put it onto I might put it onto the Discord server.
Do it. Do it. Yeah. I think that I wonder what they'll do in that Tufton. If Labour are enough for the next 5 years, unless they take policy documents off Tufton Street. I mean, what are they going to be doing? Preparing for a Conservative government that won't be in for 10 years. What are they going to? What paper? Who are they going to send their papers to now?
The newspapers. A lot of those headlines where they ask a question, like, "Are trans people eating your pets?" ? It's always. A policy document has been released by Civitas, by think tank Civitas, who say that mole people from Mars are coming to eat your babies. And you're like, I
God.
don't think that's really happening in the real world. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh, that's true. I forgot. That's what we need. Press reform. Come on, Labour.
Yes.
Do something.
Come on. The two types of PR that we need: press reform
What?
and proportional
Well,
representation.
I mean, I think after a year of being humped by the papers, I think Keir's going to get tired of it. I just hope that he's going to think, you know what, we need to do something about press reform, because he can't go for 5 years. I mean, the winter fuel allowance wasn't handled comms-wise very well. But
no, the shit at comms, Rachel. We always talk about this. Labour suck
so bad.
So bad at comms.
And the right-wing papers have gone nuts over it. And you think, oh, why you let this happen, mate? You haven't, you let, even if he threatens to hold Leveson to, he might shut them up at least, but he's not even doing, I mean, I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway, there we go. Well, that concludes the fun. Thank you very much for.
Well, thank you for bringing the fun. Thank you for setting the agenda
thank you
for
to the socialites.
Thank you to everyone in the chat for being lovely and respectful, and no one had to be booted, no one had to be shut down or silenced. Help! I've been silenced. Here's my best-selling memoir. Help! I've been silenced. Number one in the New York Times bestsellers list for the last 10 weeks. I've been on a tour of every Barnes and Noble.
And you only get told to account by Lorraine.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been silenced. Start a YouTube channel if you're worried about being silenced.
Yeah.
Or if you don't want anyone to watch your stuff, start a Rumble channel. No one's watching it because it's set up for weirdos.
But you might get £1 million worth of backing from Russia.
Oh, from the Russians, yeah. That's a whole different episode. We'll talk about another thing, another time. Rachel, will you be about on Friday for our social?
Yeah,
which is now at 9:30 on Fridays because we don't want to have a clash with our friend.
It's Wellington Boots night, but I'll have to talk to my wife.
Wellington Boots. Is that when you fill a Wellington boot full of champagne and drink it?
We do that as well. Absolutely. Well, no.
Do you know where that expression comes from? Fill your boots.
Go on.
So apparently, this is what I got told when I was having the tour of the Keynes Brewery in Liverpool many moons ago. That back in the day, they used to allow the people brewing the beer to drink the beer. And then it got to a point where daft things were happening and people were getting injured because everyone was drunk. So they said you can't, drink the beer. So people were coming in with, secret mugs of tea or whatever and empty mugs, and they'll scoop up the mug out the vat and have a drink. And so they were like, okay, we're gonna check everyone. We're gonna pat them all down and make sure they're not secretly hiding a glass that they're taking into. And so people took off their Wellington boots, dropped it in the vat, scooped it into the vat of real ale, and then down it went. And that's where the expression "fill your boots" comes from. I don't know if this is true or not, but if it is,
beer that your foot's been in there. I mean, that's like, ooh.
I don't know. If I'd already had a few drinks, I'll probably do it. I mean, put a few drinks in me, mate. I'm psycho. Anyway, I'm up for anything. Rick, thank you very much, saying cheers, and Roxy Rule saying cheers. Thank you for being such legends, Graham and Rachel. That is so nice. Thank you. We've also got Billy Kershaw in there as well, MH Carer, Sarah Davis, Siskin Edge, and One Eggy Pagan.
Fantastic.
And thank you, and from Wales. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much to Rachel for being absolutely awesome, as always. And we're going to go away now. Uncle Phil will be back in the morning. Phil Morehouse from A Different Bias will be back at 9:30 with The Morning Brew. So please check that out. And until then, I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching. Give us a like on the way out. And until next time, hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.